Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Gustavo Vinuesa. I work at the Ferryfield Group, and it's my pleasure to have Leonardo Barros today. So, Leo, if you can turn on your camera, that would be great. And I think that you can see Leonardo's screen. Just as a little bit of him, right? He's a senior project and risk management specialist with almost 30 years of experience in capital projects in different industries: oil and gas, energy mining, paper, industrial construction, and renewable sectors. And he has led management programs for major organizations such as Raízen, Vale, Braskem, Shell, and Modec, and developing proprietary methodologies and applying simulations to the forecast of cost and schedule outcomes with high accuracy. His work has supported strategic decision making in multi-million and multi-billion dollar portfolios, including FPSO construction, biogas and second generation ethanol projects, transmission systems, and large industrial facilities. Leonardo lives in Rio de Janeiro, and he holds an MBA in project management and recognized for implementing data-driven, reliability-focused risk frameworks that deliver measurable performance improvement. So thanks so much, Leo, for coming. This presentation will be uploaded for the people who register during the next week. And well, we're very lucky to have Leo today. So thanks again. I will be shot and I will be answering the Q&A if you have questions and interrupting Leo. So please, floor is yours.
All right. Hi, everyone. Very nice to have you here. And it's an honor to speak about risk management again. I think that's the area I like the most in project management because of the good results you can achieve when you do a proper risk management. I'd like to share some things about risk management itself and about how I use Safran to properly manage the risk and proper to assist the decision makers to take more informed risk decisions, right? More informed decisions. So I think everyone can see my screen. So thank you again for assisting this webinar. So this is the agenda today. I'd like to talk about the shutdown challenge. I'm focusing in the plant shutdown because it has some things that in particular that must be taken care of. How to understand uncertainty, the strategic framework I use it, some tools and techniques also I use in the past projects, and some case studies and takeaways. All right, so what is the shutdown challenge we have? Because a shutdown itself, a plant and of any production is a very demanding event. So you have to try to manage a lot of different things at the same time, but in a very short period, because every time you stop a plant, you'll be losing money in a certain way. So this is, and by the other hand, the shutdown, they're essential to maintain asset integrity, meeting requirements, and sustain the long-term performance. So this is a very complex environment to have some shutdown, and it's a very good, on the other hand, environment to have good risk management. So it's a critical complexity because you have hundreds of interdependent tasks, different contractors, different systems, and everything must be coordinated in a very short time. So the pressure is very high. And you have the cost and schedule pressure because every hour on the planet is going to be completely translated into more cost and more time. Safety and environmental exposure because you have too many people in this short period in a small space most of the time. So you have a high risk environment. And you have vulnerability to surprise because you have some unforeseen events. You never know how is really is an equipment until you open it. You really don't know the full extent of your scope until you are performing the shutdown. So what is the pitfall? Because most of the risk down failures, the shutdown risk failures I've seen is because people are every time focused in the execution of the shutdown itself. But you should also be looking for the pre-shutdown phase. This is where you can improve the chance of success of your shutdown. Because there you can have a better scope definition, a better vendor qualification, and you can really identify the risks with the proper time to do all the mitigation plans. So this is one thing I have observed in my career. The planning risks are always neglected because the assumptions are not challenged. We have our own bias, and we have to stick with our bias for a long time. And this is something that risk management is always trying to touch. We have to go for the assumptions, challenge it, and see if it really works or you need to be changed. And if you start to do this in the pre-shutdown phase, you have a plenty of time to do this. And you do not validate your constraints, the conditions are not developed. People have to think that you have this time for the shutdown and disease and I have to make it happen. But when you work previously, sometimes you have to challenge even the shutdown window itself. You have reactivity pursuit that dominates because you tend to respond to problems, not to work in advance, to be more proactive to try to treat the risks. And the mitigation windows are lost because if you are already in the shutdown, you probably have no time for a new vendor, for a new contractor, or to put more people inside because you have all your, site entrance procedures, this and that. So what I could observe, bring some data from the industry in terms of the reality of the shutdowns. You have 20% average schedule overrun, 20% budget overrun, and the number one supply chain disruption. This you can see easily. I don't know how many of you have ever worked in the shutdown and try to observe what happened in the shutdown. Oh, this is a 20-day shutdown. Used to end up with like 30 days, 25 days. And I told you before, each day you lose, each day of production you lose is money that you are losing it as well. So this figure is from benchmarking from oil and gas, energy, and mining sectors, and organizations without structural risk management programs, they really suffer much more than companies that are looking for risk management. So what is the strategic framework I use usually? Well, people tend to think that of risk management as a standalone activity is au contraire. Risk, I think, is the most integrated discipline we have in project management or areas, you can say area, because you need to be integrated with everyone, with, planning, supply chain, finance, operations, administrative, HR, HSC, everyone, community. You must be aware of everything. Risk will be the area that will integrate everything to try to translate this into cost, into time. So, and everything, another thing that's very important, risk management in shutdown must start in the concept of the shutdown. Now, as we have in the project, is if such risk management in the project conceptual phase is much better for the project itself. The same thing should be applied to shutdown. You must define the risk appetite and tolerance. Sometimes we forget it. Sometimes they're so used to have risks happening, but you don't go back to 101 to our risk management plan and see what is my appetite, what is my tolerance for this risk. And you must have the clear accountability. When you are developing uh, mitigation plans, we must know who's going to be responsible to implement it and when he has to do it, everything. So accountability is a key because we know that mitigation plans are the key to risk management success. And you have to continuous monitoring. People sometimes also start to do risk management 1 month, the first month, first 2, 3, 4 months. After that, they just forgot it. They do one in 3 months. And I have worked in a shutdown, starting the pre-shutdown phase that were like 1 year ahead of the shutdown. So we could plan, but we had to keep monitoring in a regular basis. So, and the techniques I use it to identify, I don't know the proper techniques, but I use multiple techniques. I use the technical risk. I go for the technical teams to see, okay, what you can tell me about this kind of shutdown, how many have you done in your past, and this and that. So they can go very technical and tell me what was happening, and I could identify these risks. Then I go for the logistical risks, uh, like material delays, contract availability gaps, personnel competence shortfalls, and site access constraints. I highlight this for a reason. I've ever worked in some industrial plants, not just for shutdown, but for regular work as well. And we intend to have, a team, a squad entering in 15 days or 30 days mobilization. But because of the site access procedure, this instead of 15, 30 days, this became like 45, 60 days. So this is an area that's very sensitive and very well and very neglected in our process. And risk management is an area that can assist you to do not forget this area. Of course, we have our standard risks like weather events, regulatory changes, market volatility affecting contract rates and material costs is also part of risk management. Is again is an area that can monitor this. Human factors, that's workforce competence gaps, miscommunications, fatigue, and organizational decision-making failures. Why I brought that? Because sometimes you need to have a very fast decision, mainly if you are in the shutdown phase. It is because of the procedures, because of our compliance, governance. We do not think to have a special one or a proper one for the shutdown phase, and you have this pitfall here. And financial risks, and budget overruns from scope growth. That's very common in shutdowns. Currency and market volatility, sorry, insurance gaps and contractual disputes with vendors. So the role of uncertainty is not really a simple problem to solve because it is inherent to the risk itself. So risk is really a discipline that's trying to work with this uncertainty. But the primary source of uncertainty is something you must understand. So complex systems have some ways that cannot be fully anticipated. So there will be always some uncertainty there. Ambiguous scope. So sometimes you have a not very clear requirement. So I have to open this equipment. Is this very well written? So this kind sometimes is ambiguous, and if it's not very clear, I'll probably spend more hours in that equipment than I predicted. Resource variability, because the task duration will directly influence the time you spend in each, let's say, maintenance order. And some external factor again, some weather regulatory decision. So there are plenty of uncertainty we have to work with, but if you categorize that, it'll be easier for you to understand and see how you can respond to each one. So how to qualify this uncertainty? Probabilistic analysis. I can't see a shutdown being made only with qualitative analysis. So you must go for probabilistic analysis. You must run simulations. So you must define properly the distributions. You must understand the way the works are done to see if I use a triangular, a beta path, a uniform, if I use the correct distribution for that particular activity. I need to run Monte Carlo. Uh, I really sometimes don't understand why people insist to do multi-millionaire, billionaire projects without risk management, and when they go for risk management, they go for qualitative, and they really can't see what is really happening and how to interpret the outcomes. Because sometimes people put some data into the software, run a simulation, and really cannot understand what is the simulation is telling. Sometimes the simulation is wrong because you have a wrong data entry, but you must be trained to understand what the outcome of the simulation is. And for some of the techniques I use to really identify risk is expert brainstorm, checklist and historical review. Sometimes you forget the past, and this is also you tie risk management with internal controls, with governance, because if you have good procedures, you can learn with one not that good shutdown, and if go for the next one, you can influence with the correct procedures to have checklists, to have historical reviews. SWOT analysis is another kind of technique I use. Assumption and constraint analysis. Go again for the planning and challenging the planning It challenges every step or the major step to see if everything is in line. Root cause analysis and continuous identification. Again, because sometimes I have worked in a project, I had like 700 risks, and no, someone told me, okay, it's enough. I said, no, never enough. You be always having risks coming up, and you have to be always identifying risks. So risk analysis. I told you that I don't like much the qualitative analysis, but it's necessary because it's necessary in a universe that you have hundreds of risks. You have to prioritize the mitigation plans. You have to prioritize something. So the qualitative analysis is the area, is the kind of analysis I'm going to use first to tell me what risk I have to prioritize first. I'm not saying that I'm not going to look for all the risks, but in a universe that I have hundreds of risks, sometimes I have to take some choices. And the qualitative analysis, you give it mainly for the impacts that are going to be high. This is going to be the first one. I'm going to raise mitigation plans. After that, I'm going to quantitative analysis. And then I'm going to go for probabilistic cost and schedule modeling, Monte Carlo outputs, and inform the contingency itself. Here is, and going back again, when I have the proper time that I start to do risk management, is where I can tell this shutdown can happen in this window or not. I'll bring a case of that. And I have to develop and propose a robust response plans. So actionable contingency. Each significant risk must have a defined response plan. Is a risk that is important, cannot be just another ordinary risk. Must be a risk that must be taken care of. I have to define the triggers. Sometimes people have a good mitigation plan, a good response plan, but can't understand when this response plan will going to be triggered. And again, I bring back the accountability. A risk plan, a response plan must have an owner and must have a time, a proper window to be implemented. And I have to regularly review the cycles, as everyone in risk, as everyone also in projects, and must be always aligned to the risk appetite. Another very important thing are always forgotten. People, when hear the word risk, they go automatically to threats. So as something bad is going to happen to my project. Not really that. Risk is not for failure. Risk is just, that's not just, but risk is mainly uncertainty. So we need to avoid the threat bias, not look only for threats, but go for opportunities. Thinking how I can do it better. And if you have it, risk management being done in the pre-shutdown phase, it will be much easier for you to think in new techniques, new vendors, develop new contractors. So we have more time to look for opportunities. When you're pressured by time, you're probably not going to look for opportunities, just going to try to avoid the threats. And what are the tools to enhance the decision making? The risk management software. I use Safran. I met Safran 3 years ago. I started using. I can say probably is one of the best. I think the best risk management software I use so far. So you have to proper model your Monte Carlo simulation. You have to proper model your risk. So you have an outcome that you can understand and assist the decision maker with better information. It's very good to have a project management platform, integrated scheduling and resource management tools, so you can easily connect the tools. Data analytics and visualization. One thing that sometimes we from risk management, we fail is to translate to the decision maker what are the results of risk. We're very technical. So when you use a good dashboard, a good Power BI, and you can translate our language, our proper risk language to the decision makers, you see that you understand better and you use our information for the decision making process. Scenario planning software. So you must test some what if analysis. And again, if you are in the pre-shutdown phase, it's much easier for you. And collaborative platforms. Don't stay in our silos. We need to be always talking to everyone in our project. So collaboration platforms are a much easier way to communicate our outputs and also get input from them. Something that I use very much, mainly at Raízen, and I show you in a minute, is joint confidence level. Because we used to say that I have a P80 for schedule and have a P80 for cost. When you join both, you see that it's not a P80. And what I could learn from that is that the most of the company, most of the board, they want a P80 in everything. So this is where the JCL comes up. So you can have this integrated analysis to take the decision making. Oh, look, if you want to be really a P80, when both schedule and cost, this is where you should go. It's not really an easy way to take it, and I'll show in a moment because you have some decisions to make. So monitoring and control, you have to monitor triggers, you have to evaluate response effectiveness, and this is very important. When you have a risk being crystallized, you have to see, okay, how we have it crystallized, how I predicted, was higher, was lower, what happening. So you need to do this homework of being looking for what really happened in your project and be going back and say, oh, let's evaluate and see it's really good or not. And always identify the risk. This is a cycle. We have to do, you're going to be doing this over and over and every month at least of the project. Regular reviewing the risks that we have already identified and track the identified risks. You continue to monitor the state. And why I bring this, sometimes they have a low risk, and just okay, it's a low risk. I'm not going back to the risk anytime soon. But when you just decide to go back to this risk, it's no longer a low risk. It's a medium, it's a high risk. So this is why you have to be tracking all the identified risks. So let me bring some case studies. This is a petrochemical plant maintenance shutdown. So I was brought to this project to identify, to give to the owners when the shutdown should happen. They had a date, and it was in this project to test this date. I was in the pre-shutdown phase. We made several meetings. Was a very intense work. What we find out, they had to postpone in 3 months because there was no way for the shutdown to happen in the month they predicted, because they have a lot of risks, mainly in supply chain. Materials come from abroad, so we had maybe possible problems with customs clearance, this and that. So the correct decision was to postpone in 3 months. Everything because of risk management and Monte Carlo simulation. Another study is a large-scale equipment installation. So it was in a substation expansion, and you have a proper time to shut down the substation because of the area. I was in an area in Brazil, and if you shut down your substation, you have to reroute all your power for other substation. So because we did a very good risk management, we could make the shutdown as planned. We were always in contact with the operator of the system. We were every time talk to them, anticipating all the negotiations, all the leverage points. So with that, we could have a good contract, because they understood this variability. We had to anticipate as much as you can any activities, because by the time we would tell to the power operator in Brazil that we had to shut down, we could not miss that window. And the Raízen approach. The Raízen approach, I started project management from scratch, where I created a plan, I create the procedure, I create everything, the framework, everything. And then we came up with every time I had decision that was made based on risks. So the date, the cost, everything was based on risks for the called E2G, the second generation ethanol plant that we worked. So we have, and that the people could see the maturity of the risk growing, because it's a company that was using many to be just in operations and they start projects. We use very advanced techniques. We start just with simulation. Went through JCL. We were going to probabilistic cash flow as well. So we're going through all tools that Safran could offer to make a better decision-making process. And we start a continuous improvement culture. That is something that I like to bring as well. Risk is not just a tool. Risk must be a culture in your organization, in your project, so you can always have better results. And here I can bring some outcomes. Well, the figure is going to be in Portuguese, but I can translate for you. So here is the overall dashboard. So instead of presenting, the typical S curve, the bell curve or whatever, I was just translating this in some. Each month here is a month of a simulation, and here are the results of the deterministic. For example, here the deterministic curve, and here is the P80 curve. So, what's the project getting closer, converging or diverging to the deterministic date? So I could bring this in a monthly basis so people would understand the power of risk management when they could see this gap decreasing. And the same thing for extra cost. So what would be my extra cost? They expected zero extra cost. It was planned in the business case. And I was showing them that, okay, no, this is not possible. You must expect some extra costs. Here I bring the sensitivity analysis. So instead of just bringing the tornado chart, I was bringing differently. I was bringing here that is impacting cost, that is impacting schedule, impacting costs. It's going to be crystallized up to 30 days. I have a mitigation plan implemented or not, or to be implemented. And here were the risk drivers. So I could bring in a more, let's say, better view, nicer view to the decision makers than just put then a lot of tornado charts, a lot of S curves, with a lot of statistics there they would not understand. Another work I did is to bring, like, I have three phases here, not two phases, but the startup. So I have the civil construction, electromechanical assembly, erection, and the startup. So I could bring here what would be the P80 for each one of these dates, the sensitivity analysis of the three major risks, and what were the risks and the impact. So this is much easier for them to understand, to see, oh, now I can understand what you're telling me about this, like 30 days is coming from here. They can understand it better. Here I have the Monte Carlo simulation for cost. So they have these two deterministic figure here in gray, and I was telling them, okay, in this simulation, these are the figure that you must expect. So in the final one, that's the last one, you should expect more 5% for your, let's say, pessimistic number of costs. I'm telling you that is much higher than that. And this I could just bring it in different cost items, and the P80, some forecast, the deterministic forecast they did, and the variations, and what was happening in that case. And the JCL I told you before. So I have the combined 6% JCL, that is the P80 results crossing costs and time. So this was the result. And then we have to make a decision. Do I want to keep the time, the schedule? Do I want to keep the cost? Or do something like middle ground, balance it? So, and this is a decision to be made to the decision makers, not us. The risk management is here to show that there are some possibilities to really achieve the P80 in both, but must make a decision. You want to keep the schedule and increase the price, you want a middle term, or want to try to keep the price and just increase the cost. And what is the lesson learned I bring from Safran Risk user? So the schedule forecast accuracy. We improve the accuracy of the schedule by using risk management, because every time I receive a new schedule, I have to run through Safran and something was wrong, a missing link, maybe a broken logic, some negative lags, something like that. And these are also improve the way they were planning, because risk management has this powerful tool. Safran has a powerful tool just to have a report, send them back to planning, please fix this and that, because this can cause not just for risk management, for the project itself, and a problem in the future. The critical risk identification, though it could, and this is something people sometimes tend, I just want to see the risks in the critical path. And I say, but why you want to do this? Because if I have a lag, and a 5 days lag, and I have a risk of 10 days, this will be your new critical path. And by telling this kind of thing, they could realize that they cannot just look for the critical path. So the critical risk sometimes is not the critical path, it's somewhere different in a project. A better stakeholder communication, because when I give a probabilistic approach, you have up to 80% to achieve this date or this cost. They understand them much better. So, and everything is data backed. It's not just a guess. You have all the risks, you have all the numbers, and all the figures, so you can show them how you achieve that number, why you have that outcome. You are much more effective in planning your contingents. Again, if I have the proper time, it's much better. Sometimes I know that we arrive too late in the project. Sometimes the project is already defined. Sometimes we arrive in the middle of the execution and you have to give them bad news. But even if you give bad news before they realize that it's already late or the budget overrun, is better than it usually happens, that they do not do risk management and they find out 1 month, 2 months before the startup, or that they're going to have an overrun and a delay. By that, you're going to reduce your overrun. Just believe it. Just believe you're going to have a better overrun here. I have a question here. How do you manage to make
this is from Vincenzo. It says, how do
right?
you manage to make the scheduled sanity check done, being much time consuming? Do planner normally support you in full to address all the inconsistencies, and sometimes there could be thousands of them? So how do you manage that part? Thank you, Vincenzo.
Yeah, thank you, Vincenzo. I just passed for that in Raízen. We have like 5,000 lines. We go by blocks. Sometimes what I can tell you, Vincenzo, even though you have like a very long 1,000 of lines schedule, you go by blocks. And if you start early, before you have to teach them sometimes. Sometimes it's very good that the risk management person has some background in planning, because it helps them to say, you cannot have broken links. You cannot use many start to start link between activities, because this causes this and that. The tennis check, the first 2 or 3 will be very painful for sure, because they'll be learning with you why you are asking them to do this sanity check. But after that, they start to do a better schedule as well. I expect to have answered your question. So how to build? Okay, thank you, Senso. Build a risk resilience shutdown. So some technical tools you have to learn for every project. It's quite obvious, but sometimes the obvious must be stated. We do projects. I have like almost more than 30 years now. I just completed 30 years of project management in my life, project experience in my life. And we fail a lot to get what we have done in our past. We forget it. So if you learn, okay, lessons learned is one of the key to have good project in the future. We have to encourage open communications. People tend to hide risks because they think, okay, if I identify this risk, okay, people will think there's something wrong in my area, and I don't want to do this. So you have to create a safe space for risks. We are not going to don't want to point fingers what is right or wrong. Just want to find what are the weak areas of the project and strengthen them. This is what the risk management wants. We want to achieve the project as planned and as budget. We have to invest in training and tools. People tend to be stuck in what they learned in the past and do not evolve. We have to evolve. And we have to foster a strong risk culture. People have to think risk naturally. And I'm saying risks, I'm not saying threats, I'm saying risks, so opportunities again. You have to bring opportunity to the game. Sometimes we're so focused in the threats that you just forget the opportunities. And the key takeaways I bring here is shutdowns are inherently uncertain, as every project, but the shutdowns are very pressured by the short time I have to shut down the plant. A life cycle approach is not negotiable, so I have to begin as soon as I can. I have to start risk management. Quantify uncertainty probabilistically. We must go for probabilistic approach. We cannot leave with qualitative analysis and say that something is just low, medium, or high. I cannot have any decision that I have, okay, a high risk. I don't know what is this, but I have a 5 days impact risk. I know what is this. I have to leverage the risk tool. I have specialized risk softwares, analytical platforms, and collaboration tools. If I bring these three to the game, I have a much better risk management. And the proactive risk management that drives the value. So we have to anticipate every dollar invested in early risk identification, mitigation, return multiples, and avoid the cost, schedule protection, and safety outcomes. This is sometimes so obvious, but sometimes we don't do the obvious, and we must do it. So the foundation is an early integration. As soon as I start, and sometimes I repeat this sentence in a purpose, because sometimes I just forget it. So we have to influence on the scope definition. We have to avoid scope creep. We have to set realistic expectations about budget and schedule. Sometimes you just receive something and you try to fit this budget and schedule in our project. It should be the other way around when we have time. So we have to identify risk before materialization. Sometimes they have some people, okay, I have a risk identified because the activity A has delayed. You say, sorry, it's no longer a risk. It's an issue now. I have to deal with. And maximize mitigation opportunities. As early as the risk is identified, as well I can have a better response. So it's quite simple as that, but it's really forgotten. So thank you for your time, people. I'm very pleased to talk to you about risk management. Here's my contact. You want to connect with LinkedIn or my mobile here. And I want to thank you, the Fairfield Group, for this webinar. And
let's see, Leonardo, if people have questions. I have a couple, but I will wait because I have a lot of curiosity on this. I used to do shutdowns for data centers in my previous life, and one question I always had, because you see that normally we as project managers, we all always talking about PAT because the project is going to be done, right? But here the project needs to finish as soon as possible because you have to recover the normal operation. So the,
yes,
the question that I had is if you had some type of additional feedback or input when you selected the PAT, or if maybe people would say, why don't you select the P90 or even P99, because if this is mission critical. What is your opinion on that?
well, you must know in your scope. The answer for that, I would say, that's not in risk itself, is the scope itself. You have to understand what you can live without and do like a different shutdown distant area in the future. You can go for P80, P95, P99. What I can say that you must define this prior to start the game. You cannot just, okay, I want a P80 now, I want a P95, P99. Okay, if a shutdown is very critical, as always is, I want to go for P90. That's okay. Define the rule of the game and be prepared to understand what I can remove from this shutdown to achieve this agreed P number.
Excellent. Thank you, Leo. I have one, and the other is going to be more practical for the people who attended. Is what are the maybe top 3-4 risks that should always be in a risk register of a shutdown?
Well, people really tend to not understand really the production index they state, and let's say in the planning. Oh, I take 5 hours to mount this pump. They try to do this, but they do not have a database for that. So this is one thing, to really go for your production index and they just believe it. They do not challenge it. They forget that this is a different crew. This is one. Another one that's abroad that's quite serious is the access to the site. When talk shutdown, people, okay, this team will enter in 15 days. There's missing some documentation. People don't know there is a shutdown there. I've seen a lot of things happen, and this is also very critical. And supply chain and materials come from abroad. I have faced some customs strikes, sometimes road strikes or road riots happening. So I could bring this one. There are a lot of ones that are quite important, the logic, the construction, the shutdown sequence, but I could say that production index, site entrance, and supply chain mainly from abroad.
Thank you, Because I had a it was fun. We had a client. He was in the petrochemicals industry, and he had the same issue with the side entrance. But this was during operation, not during a shutdown. They had a crane malfunction, but they were complaining. Their client was so bureaucratic that the mechanics could enter 1 week after the crane did malfunction. So the crane was stopped, and the crew were there. So it was. I mean, you can see it from far away, and it's funny. But I imagine that when you're there, it's not funny anymore. But thank you so much because the presentation was really good. Everybody and normally this doesn't happen, so everybody who started to come is here. So thanks everybody for joining. And please, and I will take the last key reminder that you have there in your slide that I thought it was incredibly helpful. That it's not just a project phase, but it's a continuous discipline, the risk management. So I will steal that from you. And again, thanks for the excellent webinar, Leo. That was excellent. So for all the people,
Gustavo, we have one more question here. I have one more question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me see.
No problem.
Yeah. Let me see.
The question is, you have any tips how to handle some expert biases? Because this is. Well, you must be humble in the first thing. You must be humble that because it's very hard because we are risk managers. We are not really technical experts, and you're going to talk to someone that is an expert in that, let's say, that system, and try to challenge him that, well, maybe the time you're telling that you're going to take to change this is not really okay. So be humble. Be humble. Try to explain him why are you asking these kind of things, but try to not be very technical. I have this very good feedback in the past that I was very technical when I was explaining risks, even though I was very excited in explaining that. But this is why I rely on a good dashboard and a good simple information to deal with this very optimistic bias as you wrote here. That we're going to deliver on time, there's going to be no risk, no budget overrun, everything going to happen just that. And we'll say, okay, but maybe let's think if something goes wrong, how are you going to deal with? And try to ask them, have you ever experienced something that happened different from what you thought? In your experience, by something that you have predicted that you would take like 5 hours or 5 days or 5 months and was differently? So by bringing them to their own reality, this will have assist you. I expect to have answered your question.
This was excellent. Thank you. I didn't see the question. So thank you, Ilya, for that. And again, thanks, Leo. Normally, we publish the videos 2 or 3 days after we finish the call, and we will send an email with the link for you guys. If you like, I'm going to send one of our last webinars that we have 2 days ago. If you're Safran Risk users, this is a video about what's new in version 25.1, if you like it. And we'll have you again, Leo. I mean, normally we don't have so many questions, so and this was such an interesting topic. So I really think this was an outstanding presentation. Thanks for your time, and thanks for your generosity with your knowledge.
Right. Thank you, guys. And again, thank you all for assisting this webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.